Beyond the Spider-Verse has finally arrived after a long few months of tiresome waiting and very little advertisement. We all thought it wouldn't make it, but to everyone's surprise, it's actually genuinely here. And I'm sure a lot of people have been wondering, was the wait worth it? Was it truly that big of a deal that they had to split one movie into two? Does Miles Morales' story end on an incredible note or a lackluster one? Well, let's decide. I'll be doing this in a similar way to how I handled the Across review, reviewing it in non-spoiler talk first and then spoiler talk later. So if you haven't had the opportunity to view this yet, you can leave when I start talking full spoilers. With that said, let's cover the end to Miles Morales' Headstrong trilogy and decide whether or not you should go see this movie. Okay, so right off the bat, let's obviously address the elephant in the room, the animation quality. I think a lot of people were very worried coming off the trailers because of the switch from consistent, otherworldly art styles and animation to the switch to every universe having the Spidey and his amazing friends style. But I gotta say, I genuinely believe they actually cooked really hard here. I won't go too in depth, but it really helped to sell Mayday's arc about being allowed to grow up, while also sticking to your roots. It also really supports Earth 42 Miles' arc about choosing his future, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section, but let's just say what he chooses in the end will truly surprise you. I know it surprised me, that's for sure. I thought the voice cast in this film was interesting to say the least. I found it weird that Jake Johnson was laid off for Tom Holland instead. Miles and Gwen were thankfully not replaced, but Miguel weirdly was changed to be voiced by Fidel Gamescage, a decently well-known streamer on Twitch, instead of Oscar Isaac. I'm not complaining about the change, but it was definitely out of nowhere. Fidel and Tom surprisingly delivered in their performances, and I hope we'll see them for any future projects regarding the Spider-Verse. At the very least for Tom, we still have Spider-Man 4 on the horizon, which, even if it's not Peter B, should be very fun. The soundtrack was something. I don't even know what to say about the soundtrack. The film's soundtrack consists of around 40 songs, and every single one is either blatantly stolen or sounds like it's from the Game Boy Advance. I'm actually pretty sure I heard some Sonic Advance music in there. The Spider-Man PS4 theme is also used like 30 different times in the film for some reason, and it feels like Sony took the wrong lesson from Madame Web's soundtrack. Honestly, with how bad this OST is, I honestly believe Sony paid the composers actual scraps they found on the street, and the composers purposely sabotaged it to get back at the higher-ups. But still very disappointing work, especially with how incredible the last two films' music were. The plot of the film is actually great though. Again, I can't go too in depth, but let's just say if you're a fan of Spider-Ham, you're going to love this film. It truly is a work of art that reminds you why you should love these characters as much as you probably already do. Hands down, I'd say it's genuinely just beautiful. Though I found the way they handled Miles and Gwen's relationship to be interesting. Some of the choices made were definitely very frustrating. Actually, you know what, let's just talk about spoilers. Okay, so, spoiler time. Spider-Ham is the MVP of the film, and I mean that with 100% and 1000% of my heart. His arc revolves around the injustice of pigs in the multiverse. Seeing all his friends turn into bacon was a very horrifying but deeply touching story. He's shut away when he reveals he's actually a spider who was turned into a pig, but slowly and surely they come to accept him and agree that no matter whether he was originally a pig or not, he's still facing the same problems they are, and they can relate to him in the same way he can relate to them. It makes Spider-Ham's sacrifice to save the multiverse so much more interesting. He faced so many rough times in his lifetime, and for him to finally be the one who saves everyone, even if no one will ever know, is truly heroic. He sets a standard for spider heroes and heroes as a whole that I don't think will ever be surpassed. You'll probably realize that I said even if no one will ever know, and that's because unfortunately this movie does a memory wipe thing, where none of the Spider-Verse remembers except for the main cast. That, however, is actually because the worlds fuse at the end, forming a brand new world. And what's interesting is this actually reveals that Spider-Verse was a prequel for Fortnite the entire time. At the end of the movie, the Spider Society comes together to web together as many worlds as they can, and in the process create the 0 point. This brings birth to the island of Athena. The final scene before the credits roll is Miles waking up on the island and exiting his home in Pleasant Park, as Gwen is waiting outside, along with their ship, which sets them up on a road trip across the multiverse, leaving the newly reformed Spider Society to protect the island. The post-credits scene, however, shows that this was a failure, as when Miles and Gwen exit Reality Zero, Jenna and Sloane are shown to be commanding an army that storms the island and overtakes it. Overall, I thought it was a very odd choice to connect it to Fortnite, but in the end I kinda get why it was done. Miles and Gwen both felt trapped in their worlds, and only truly enjoyed life whenever they saw each other or got to see other worlds. So having them be the ones to form this multiversal hub of sorts feels like a very smart idea, and I'm excited to see what implications it will have on Fortnite lore. I also want to speak more on Miles and Gwen's relationship. This film introduces a gimmick to the multiverse that I found to be incredibly unique and interesting. Basically, when Miles and Gwen start dating, if they ever break up, the multiverse just ends. It goes to show how unbreakable their bond is, that if they break up, the multiverse just dies of shock. I thought Miguel's redemption was very well handled. He actually faces consequences for everything he caused, and just like we thought, the canon events were confirmed to be just something Miguel used to gaslight himself into believing it was all his fault. Miguel's story is used to tell a message that not everything that goes bad is always going to be your fault. You can put yourself down, or you can learn to accept what happened and move on in order to live your life to the fullest. It's a very beautiful message that I hope anyone suffering with something similar is able to take from. Moving on, I also want to mention Mayday's arc. When the writers revealed Mayday was going to get an arc, I would think everyone was very confused. How do you give a literal infant an arc? Well, the arc is actually for future Mayday, who is introduced halfway through the film via a Spider-Man who is literally Doctor Who. This Mayday realizes she'd been living her life wrong by running away from everything she deemed too childish to enjoy and forced herself to grow up. That's the thing everyone deals with in life, and I think it was very well handled here, even if grown Mayday was only in the film for a limited time. I did still like her inclusion a lot, and it's always good to see Mayday get some form of representation. Miles 42 also is in the film quite a lot. After Earth 42, Aaron and Rio die when the Spot attacks. He's confused about what he wants to do with his life, but he knows he can't give up the criminal life permanently anymore. Upon returning to his Earth, he chooses to start up a corporation, and his final scene ends with him trademarking the name Mapper, with Miles 42 coming to the conclusion the most evil thing he could do is overwork his employees, as a reference to Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Finally, we have the Spot. The Spot just kinda dies. Howie makes a sudden return after being gone for 95% of the movie, and drowns Spot in 30,000 bagels, which is how he dies, and reveals the actual villain was Riot from the Venom movies. This was revealed to tie into the upcoming Spider-Gwen show, where it reveals she will have 6 months to defeat Riot with her new band, before he's 6 months all over the place. Fun fact, Riot's inclusion was also another reference related to overworking employees, as it references how long the animators on Across and Beyond the Spider-Verse went without seeing their families. Overall, despite some weird choices, I'd say this film is unironically very heartfelt and beautiful. It truly made me feel for the characters, and while I am sad that the Spot didn't get more time to shine, I am happy with how the film turned out overall. I'm excited to see Riot's inclusion in the Spider-Gwen show, supposedly titled Sheena's Dynasty. And, okay, you know what, I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm sorry. I am so fucking sorry. Happy April Fools. Please go watch an actual video I've made that isn't literal slop. I swear it'll be fucking worth it. Goodbye. Goodbye, please subscribe. I'm sorry.